It's unacceptable. British troops will be direct target for our missiles. You will get coffins in Russia. But now Mr. Starmer, Mr. Macron threatening to my country by nuke. Why? We will kill you all if you will try to bomb us by look.
Keir Starmer is visibly alarmed after Yevgeny Popov, a Russian parliamentarian and close associate of Putin, openly issued a threat to anyone considering an attack on Russia. Without hesitation, he mentioned Starmer directly, warning that if he pursued plans to intervene in Ukraine against Moscow, the outcome would be severe. His remarks carried immense weight and were delivered with chilling intensity. He declared that if leaders ever contemplated deploying nuclear arms or sending soldiers, they would receive only coffins in return. But what else did he reveal that has pushed Starmer into retreat, forcing him to explore alternatives instead of committing to direct involvement in the war? In this video, we'll uncover everything. Keir Starmer has made it disturbingly obvious that he is willing to risk British lives in the Ukraine crisis. His recent proposal to send British forces to Ukraine as so-called peacekeepers is not merely irresponsible, but also an open invitation to catastrophe. Moscow wasted no time in making its position unmistakably clear. British forces in Ukraine will be considered legitimate targets for Russian strikes.
The British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said he's willing to put British troops in Ukraine as peacekeepers after any deal.
It's unacceptable. British troops will be direct target for our missiles. You will get coffins in return.
You see, this is not a diplomatic spat. It is a stark warning of large-scale deaths delivered by Yevgeny Popov, a senior lawmaker from Putin's United Russia party and one of the most prominent figures in Russian politics. His statement to Britain leaves no ambiguity. If soldiers are deployed, they will return in coffins. And still, despite this unmistakable threat, Starmer persists with reckless posturing, pulling the UK further into a conflict in which it has no rightful place. Perhaps he has overlooked that he is not the first British Prime Minister to face Russian intimidation. Boris Johnson was personally warned by Putin on the very same matter of Ukraine.
What is any time soon? And I said, well, it's not going to join NATO for the foreseeable future. You know that perfectly well. Fundamentally, it wasn't about, he threatened me at one point and said, Boris, I don't want to hurt you, but with a missile, it would only take a minute or something like that,
When questioned about whether Russia genuinely seeks peace, Yevgeny Popov answered without delay. He stressed that Moscow does not aim for an endless war. He explained that the confrontation was never Russia's choice, but something it was compelled to enter. From the Kremlin's viewpoint, this is not a campaign of imperial conquest, but a defensive response to NATO's persistent eastward push. For Russia, it is more than a local conflict. It is a broader fight to resist Western military encirclement, a condition that Putin and the ruling elite regard as a direct threat to survival.
We don't want to be at war forever. We didn't want this war. You should understand our main goal is security guarantees for Russian people. NATO infrastructure is going closer and closer to our borders, and Ukraine is a direct threat to our security. And now we are trying to get security guarantees agreement with the United States. And we've seen at least two meetings between US officials and Russian officials, and we're trying to reach some agreement.
According to Popov, the West has painted Russia as the aggressor, yet in truth, NATO has played the role of active instigator, steadily moving nearer to Russia's borders while dismissing Moscow's repeated warnings and security demands. He outlined what he described as Russia's deep-rooted grievances, which he insisted provided justification for Moscow's response.
Workers in President Zelensky's hometown. This is not the actions of a country that wants peace.
That's not true completely, because we're not.
That is not entirely true, because we are not. A pattern of NATO's enlargement, he argued, has unfolded systematically for decades. Each time Russia raised objections, the West dismissed them, extending its military presence further east, right up to Russian frontiers. One of the main issues Popov highlighted was the broken promises of the post-Cold War era. Russia has long asserted that Western leaders, particularly American officials, assured Mikhail Gorbachev in the early 1990s that NATO would not move even an inch beyond Germany. Yet since then, NATO has expanded 5 separate times, absorbing former Soviet-aligned nations such as Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic, and later the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Every move, Moscow contends, was an act of betrayal. Each enlargement brought a fresh military threat inching closer to Russian territory. For Russia, the decisive breaking point came with Ukraine's growing ties to Western defense structures over the years. NATO increasingly treated Ukraine as a de facto member, supplying Western arms, training its troops, and conducting joint drills that, from Russia's viewpoint, resembled rehearsals for war. The Kremlin regarded Ukraine's alignment with the West as a direct assault on its sphere of influence, particularly after 2014, when a pro-Russian administration in Kyiv was toppled. To Moscow, Ukraine was being reshaped into a NATO stronghold, a springboard for Western operations against Russia itself. Popov stated that Ukraine had become an armed NATO proxy long before Russia's invasion in 2022. It was a state saturated with billions in Western military aid, supported by NATO instructors, and urged into an overtly hostile stance toward Russia. In Moscow's eyes, Ukraine had been turned into a battlefield and awaiting a Western instrument that could one day be deployed against Russia in a future conflict. Thus, from the Russian leadership's perspective, the war was never about expansionism. It was about survival. And for survival, any measure could be justified. Nothing is excluded, including missile strikes on countries that interfered directly in the conflict. Although the UK was among the most vocal backers of Ukraine earlier, Starmer is now escalating matters, making Britain an active participant in the confrontation. Before we move forward, let us ask, are you enjoying the video? If so, please like and share, and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive coverage on the seismic shifts taking place in British politics. Let's continue. A major misconception in the West, Popov argued, is that Russia's war is about conquest. He firmly denied that Moscow seeks to rebuild the Soviet Union or absorb Ukraine into Russia. Instead, he stressed that this war revolves around security guarantees. Russia does not aim to permanently occupy Ukraine. It aims to stop Ukraine from turning into a Western military base on its frontier. This is why, he said, Russia will not make concessions.
What concessions is Russia willing to offer in order to get this peace deal?
We're not going to offer you anything. You must offer us peace. You are delivering weapons, missiles, tanks, artillery to Ukrainians.
You're delivering missiles into the capital cities and major cities of Ukraine.
And what? Because special military operation is in progress. And we are fighting for our security.
Moscow maintains that it is the West that must retreat, not Russia. The Kremlin's stance is unmistakable. Ukraine must stay neutral. NATO must halt its push eastward, and Russia's security demands must be recognized. Anything short of this would be intolerable. Yet Starmer insisted that Ukraine should join NATO, even though Trump himself admitted such an idea is highly unrealistic.
Do you oppose NATO membership for Ukraine?
I don't think it's practical to have it, personally. I know that our new Secretary of Defense, who's excellent, Pete, made a statement today saying that he thinks it's unlikely or impractical. I think probably that's true. I think long before President Putin, they said there's no way they'd allow that. This has been going on for many, many years. They've been saying that for a long time, that Ukraine cannot go into NATO. And I'm okay with that. I just want the war, whether they are or they're not. But it certainly would seem to be that most people have said that that is something that's not.
Therefore, Popov stated that in Russia's view, the UK is no longer merely a distant backer of Ukraine, but an active participant in the war. Starmer has stepped beyond diplomacy into open confrontation, raising tensions in ways that render British interests a legitimate target. He noted that UK military intelligence plays a central role in guiding Ukrainian strikes on Russian infrastructure, effectively turning Britain into an extension of Ukraine's armed forces at this stage. Britain is not just an ally of Ukraine, it is an aggressor toward Russia, he argued. Perhaps the most pointed attack on Starmer came when Popov referred to inflation in Britain under his leadership. He remarked that Russia was at war, while Britain, which had no direct connection to the conflict, was already grappling with domestic troubles. Therefore, he said, it should focus on its internal challenges alone.
My people's life. You can't do nothing with Russia. You should negotiate with Russia. But now, Mr. Starmer, Mr. Macron, threatening to my country by nuke. Why? We will kill you all if you will try to bomb us by nuclear bombing. nuclear.
Nobody in Europe wants a single centimeter squared of Russian territory. You know, this whole situation is such a tragedy. Tragedy for your country, your economy is on its knees.
I'm agree with you. Look at your food inflation for last month.
Well, look at your food inflation. Your interest rates are at 21%. Your war economy is running out of steam.
And what? We are at war. We are at war. And of course, we have some problems with economy, but you can do nothing with that. And we will fix it. You know that Russian people live pretty good. And our economy is recovering. Your sanctions is nothing. Nobody feel it here.
Well, hang on a minute. President Trump has just today, as you will know, said he's considering large-scale further banking sanctions and tariffs if Russia doesn't agree to a peace deal.
And what it looks like, it sounds like a mockery because you already put all sanctions you could. And we live under sanctions for decades. We have our own credit card system. We have a stable ruble. We have enough food. We have enough money in the hand of our population. Of course, we have some problems in our economy, but it's not so big.
Furthermore, Popov claimed that European leaders are openly discussing the use of nuclear weapons against Russia, including Starmer among them. He then delivered a grave warning. If Britain threatens Moscow with nuclear arms, Russia will respond. In the same manner, he specifically called out both Starmer and Macron for their reckless remarks, stressing that the UK, a small island with no credible defense against Russian hypersonic missiles, is in no position to issue threats. He even went so far as to say something truly chilling.
It's easy.
Okay. The British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said he's willing to put British troops in Ukraine as peacekeepers after any deal.
It's unacceptable. British troops will be direct target for our missiles. You will get coffins in return.
To emphasize his point, Popov listed 7 UK sites that Russia has already targeted for nuclear destruction in the event of war: London, Manchester, Birmingham, Devonport, home to the UK's largest naval base, and Clyde, where Britain's Trident nuclear missiles are stored, along with Portsmouth and Chatham Dockyard, have all been identified as primary objectives. According to Popov, just 3 nuclear strikes would be enough to collapse British civilization. The UK, with its small landmass and dense urban centres, is particularly exposed to nuclear devastation. Yet Starmer, in his arrogance, continues to act as though this is a game rather than a gamble with the very survival of his nation. And now reports highlight a harsh reality. Britain is utterly unprepared for a war with Russia. The British military is a shell of its former self. Its economy is too fragile to sustain a prolonged fight, and the public has no appetite for escalating hostilities with Moscow. Years of underfunding and cuts have left the British Army at its weakest point in modern history. The Royal Navy is overstretched, and the Air Force lacks the capacity for sustained combat against a major power. Put simply, Britain does not possess the means to wage war on Russia. But none of this deters Starmer. He blindly follows the agenda of European elites who oppose peace in Ukraine and refuse to face the catastrophic consequences of escalation. He is dragging Britain into a conflict it cannot win, against an opponent already prepared to fight to the bitter end. At this stage, it is painfully clear that Starmer is not serving Britain's interests. He is not safeguarding the British people. He is placing them in grave danger. He is not leading the nation but advancing a war agenda without hesitation. If Starmer truly cared about the country's future, he would pursue diplomacy instead of reckless confrontation. He would address Britain's economic crisis rather than pouring resources into foreign wars. He would stop pretending that the UK is a global superpower capable of dictating terms to Russia and instead recognize the reality of its limited military strength. But that is not his path. Instead, he is pulling Britain into a struggle it has no reason to fight. He is provoking a nuclear-armed power, posturing for political gain at home while offering no real strategy for what comes next. What do you think? Should Starmer avoid entanglement, given that Russia has no interest in playing politics? Or do you believe this Russian MP is bluffing to frighten European leaders into stepping back? Share your views in the comments below. Is it worth the risk for the UK to gamble on such a dangerous issue? Do you want to see more videos like this? If so, please like and share and subscribe to our channel for further updates on British politics and the changes shaping it. Until the next video, stay tuned.